Hey, we are live. That's what it says anyway. We being myself, Todd Zola, filling in for Clay Link in the driver's seat, alongside some kid with a dream. We thought we'd give him a shot, see what he's good at this podcast stuff. Mr. Jason Collette. Jason, how you doing?
Doing good. Happy to be called up. Just going to take it one comment at a time. Good Lord willing, contribute to the podcast here.
Just every good comment, you say "plakata," and we're all good. You have to get MLB Network to. I've been making a lot of MLB Network jokes, so people don't get it, and well, they don't get a lot of my jokes, so it's not really a big deal. But thanks for filling in, Jason. We're going to be doing the two-start pitching as we normally do. But before we get to that, there was a recent series where we sometimes are fans, we sometimes are analysts, sometimes are both. We just watched a series between our favorite teams, the Red Sox and Rays, and calling it a series. I don't know. You mentioned off air that you thought it was a playoff atmosphere. I didn't think it was very crisp ball being played, which could be the playoffs. Who knows? But what are your the first place Rays? I got to say that. What is your impressions after this 3-game series?
Yeah, it's nice to be back in first place after that 7-game losing streak. And to your point, the crisp baseball, that's really what contributed to the 7-game slide, losing the final 2 against the White Sox, getting swept in Seattle, which was truly nature healing. Because back in the day, every time the Rays would go to Seattle, it wasn't even worth watching. And neither was that series. Losing all those games in either ninth inning or the extra innings, and then the crispness of defense, something that was really what they were doing so well during the winning streak. And just a lot of bad defensive lapses. And even in this series, on both ways, the way the first game on Tuesday night kicked off, it was 5-2 Boston at one point, and Boston scored all 7 runs because even the 2 runs the Rays had were credited to Boston's bad defense. And then things got better. Even last night, I think Boston was thrown out on the bases 4 times last night between being picked off and the great play at home being thrown out. But it had a playoff-like atmosphere because the crowd was really into it on Tuesday with Wander Franco's promotion.
Right.
I think that's where Clay Lake really he was there. Obviously wanting to see his favorite pick of the last 2 years go finally get up there. So a really live atmosphere on Tuesday, which was fun to watch, even though the outcome wasn't what I desired. But last 2 games, even last night was just crazy. I mean, 1-0 on a wild pitch. That was it. And Nick Pivetta and Josh Taylor took a no-hitter into the 8th inning. Kevin Kiermaier, of all people, is the guy that broke it up with a hit the other way, something he should be doing more of.
Right.
Quite frankly, his at-bats are just barely above a pitcher quality at this point, but the guy still gets it done defensively, as you saw last night when he threw out Hunter Renfroe at the plate. So just nice to be on the backside, upside of it, and it was an interesting series. And I fully expect them to get trashed by the Angels tonight because they've spent a lot of energy in the last 3 days because this is a critical series. I mean, yeah, it's the end of June. But you look at the way the standings are, every one of these games counts, and Boston and Tampa Bay still have a lot of games left with one another, 13 or 14, because they've only had 2 3-game series so far. So they've got more coming. And whereas I think the Red Sox and Yankees still have about the same amount of games against one another as well, because somehow those 2 teams haven't played each other that often either, which is going to make for a fun stretch here down the back half of the season.
Right. The Sox play the Yankees this weekend. Matter of fact, they've only had that one series where the Red Sox swept the New York in the Bronx. The revenge series, we'll see what happens, is coming up. But right, I was just disappointed by the quality of play for both teams. Mm-hmm. Usually weird things happen between these 2 teams, but it's usually not talking about bad play. You mentioned the base running. It wasn't just bad defense. It was poor base running, especially on Boston's part. Aggressive. There's a fine line between aggressive and reckless, and I think they were kind of teetering on that line a little bit too much last night. But yeah, what a fitting ending on a wild pitch. You alluded to it on Twitter. 1-0 game, not a whole lot of base runners. Was not exactly a Greg Maddux special.
No, it was so weird because even on Wednesday night, and one more thing about the base running, I thought Xander Bogaerts getting picked off in the first inning trying to steal third base. That was I don't understand what you're doing there. You have 2 outs. You're going to score on anything through. That was that was weird, but that helped switch momentum too, because that could have been a huge ending. But that game Wednesday night, so many deep counts, and that game took forever. And then last night, we get into the 8th inning, and there were 5 combined hits, and the game was still taking 3+ hours. And that's really why I say it felt like a playoff series, because the at bats. Yeah, and Boston has typically been a very aggressive club. I mean, they do have their share of strikeouts. They don't walk that often because they have been aggressive in the lineups. Conversely, the Rays are high in both. They're either first or second in the league in strikeouts, but they're also very high in walks. And so, but both teams struggled, and maybe that's part of the I can't feel the baseball and I can't really command my pitches anymore type of thing, which definitely was a problem with Garrett Richards. But that was a lot of deep counts, and so that game last night still went a lot longer than you look up and you're like, there's been so few hits, there's been a few walks, obviously, but every count seemed to be just deep, and that's why that game went 315, 320 last night. Yeah,
and there were a couple other games I wanted to watch, and I just one TV. I don't use the computer yet, streaming them yet. I usually turn it on. I get frustrated, and at some point during the season, turn it on, look up the code. But I'm the TV clicking guy, and there are other games I wanted to watch last night, including a combined no-hitter. Not so much what wanted to watch that, but just
did Craig Kimball even realize that was happening? He finishes the game, and he's like, "Hey, great, we won." Everybody's running. It looked like he was. Wait, something happened. Right,
crazy. You don't know with Mr. Kimball there, but we'll get to the Richards and the pitching when we talk about 2 starts, because he's lined up for 2. Well, we talk a little. Whatever. We can talk about it now. You mentioned the obviously not. He's talked about it himself. He says it's a different pitcher than he's been for the past 9 years. No, the Red Sox broadcast wouldn't come out and say it. They jumped around it. He benefited from something on his fingers, and he alluded to it as well. I'm a little concerned about Garrett Richards, and I came out on Twitter last night and suggested that Boston use him as an opener. Chaim Bloom is familiar with the concept, I believe. Yeah, and wouldn't mind seeing him as an opener, maybe bringing up Tanner Houck, and this is the Red Sox fan talking more than the analyst, because it's probably not the best idea, but use Richards as an opener. He's throw 95, right? Let him throw 97 for 2 innings, up on the zone, get some strikeouts, bring in Tanner Houck, and the day is saved. I don't think we'll see it, but I don't think it's out of the realm. Right, and I would like to see them bring Jared Durant up with Houck too. My AL tout team could really use that, and even one of my NFBC teams where I had him. So I would love to see that come up. For me, this goes for everybody. It's like, I think all of us have been checking in-game spin data just to see, but that is nothing's definitive right now. It's just something to watch. Right, you can't declare. But that said, you look at Richards' in-game spin data, and it was bad, but then you validate it with the eye test, and you and I both watched that game. He could not command his breaking balls at all. I mean, they were just useless pitches. I think 3 ended up being strikes. If I recall, 2 of them were generous calls, but anytime he was trying to throw his curveball or slider, it just wasn't happening. And the hitters really they didn't need to do it, and they just waited for the fastball. He's got a good fastball, but if it's the only thing you're going to worry about swinging at, that's what happens. And he looked horrible. I don't, and if this is the new Richards, then I don't know how he lasts in the rotation. Like, even in a 2-start week, I want nothing to do with him this week. And if you disagree with me, go back and watch the highlights of that game. Go back and look at the archive. He truly had nothing but a fastball. And it just the breaking balls, he just does. And you could see it in his face, everything, his body language, all of it was like, I don't have this pitch. And it wasn't like, but even compare Rich Hill. Rich Hill also pitched in that game. Rich Hill's in-game spin data was also way down from his season average. But Rich Hill is a veteran that still knows how to spin a baseball and can still command it. Yes, he had 5 walks in that game. There were a couple of hitters that he was pitching around. I think he wanted nothing to do with JD Martinez
whiffiness for the most part. He wanted nothing to do with Xander Bogaerts, and who could blame you the way Bogaerts beats up teams, particularly Tampa Bay of late. So, he did have 5 walks, but he also had 5 strikeouts. And Rich Hill's whiffiness has been down in his last couple of outings as he's weaned himself off with it. But that's the difference. It's like if you have a pitcher whose best pitch is a breaking ball, maybe it's gone from a great pitch to just a good one. Well, with Richards, it went from a good one to an unusable one in this last outing, so it bears watching. So for me, I pass on him this week in a 2-start week. That KC start should be a nice transition. I mean, the Oakland one's going to be a little rougher on him. I believe, that's the matchup he has. So that's really where I want to take a look and see how that's going to play out for the KC. But do your homework. To me, bench him, but watch that game to see if he can control that breaking ball. If he can't, I don't know how he stays in the rotation. Yeah,
to sort of embellish a point you made about right now, we're just monitoring, and you don't really want to do knee-jerk reactions. I wrote a piece for the site Rotowire Z-Files where I looked at the range of spins on the 4 major pitches that require the spin, right. the 4-seamer, sliders, curveball, and cutter. And depending on the pitcher, the Yu Darvish's range was 700 or 800 one year, from 2100 to 2800. So, and the standard deviation was well into triple digits. So that's one reason why we need to wait. We need to find out if it's rare variance or if it's real. A single drop doesn't tell us much. Now, I think in the case of Richards, when it was so high, we can. It's okay to make. I think we can make that assumption that you're making that there's something going on. There's just some other. You can't make that categorical assumption regardless of who the pitcher is. I think we have to take a wait and see approach. But with Richards, it is pretty obvious. So you were talking about Richards' 2 starts this week. That's a good segue. We'll go into the meat of the podcast, the 2-start rankings. Explain to Jason where we'll be doing a little bit. I'm sure over the years you've seen myself in DVR, myself and Clay do a little bit. What we do is we go through the 2-start pitchers. We'll give you guys the matchups, and we'll give a ranking 0 to 5. Somewhat arbitrary. I usually go by my rankings, which I didn't do, so I'm working blind. I will do them for the site tonight. But 5 being the best, 0 being I don't want any piece of him. Jason has already put the 0 in for Garrett Richards. We're switching platforms. We used to be able to post the rankings on the site, on the page of the old platform. We haven't figured out how to do that yet. So what I've done is I've made up a Google Doc, which I will make publicly available. Don't ask me to read the URL now because I haven't put it through tiny URL yet. So it's like Rudy Jelinek and Win Remishal combined here. But, yeah, there we go. So I will post a link to the rankings after the podcast. I'll tag it when we send it out. So you normally see it on the splash page. We'll have it on a Google Doc. Whether Clay wants to keep going with the Google Doc, that's up to Mr. Link. And good for Clay taking some time off. I believe he's seeing some family. But as Jason and I talked about before we head on, I don't think it's a coincidence.
I don't either. There's no way. Yeah, he announces he's going on vacation. Then the Rays call up Franco. It's just it's way too lined up.
There's no way. Right. The other thing that happened this week, and I'm not sure, TJ Antone came off the IL. So can you imagine if there's an interleague game and Antone faces Franco? Clay would explode.
Yes, he would. Yes, he would.
It reminds me of the spring training way back when Jason Howard and Steven Strasburg were all the rage. And remember at that point Hayward was breaking windows in parking lots with home runs.
Yeah, it seems like ages. I was watching the Cubs game the other day, and honestly, I have forgotten that he was still active in their lineup. And I look and I was like, oh my God, those are his numbers right now. Wow, it's crazy where his career trajectory. Everybody's got the aging curve, and like his is the aging cliff. There wasn't a curve; it was like, and it's gone.
Yeah, well, if rah-rah speeches during rain delays of World Series is a category. He's a first-round draft choice.
Indeed.
So the story goes anyway. Here's me putting my jack back in. That's all why people are wondering what I'm doing. All right. So let's start. I will read off the pitcher and the teams that they're playing, and we'll go through it. And these are subject to change. I haven't checked yet to see how the weather is lined up for this weekend, but between weather and teams just making changes, we don't hold us to at least the schedule. There's a busy week. You picked a busy week to be able to join us. Well, that didn't make sense. Clay picked a busy week to go away and need a replacement. So we'll start with Arizona with Callum Smith at St. Louis and home against San Francisco. We'll switch off going first. I guess I'll take this one. Smith, he started out in the bullpen, went back to being starting in. He's looked all right. These matchups are pretty good. The St. Louis matchup, especially, they're not hitting. I like Smith as a 3. It could be aggressive, but I like Smith as a 3 this week.
Yeah, and I agree. I was wrong. Preseason, I was really fading Smith. Didn't like what I saw. And then, the role of the bullpen seemed to realign him back into a better position. And he's done well. And I agree on the St. Louis matchup. The San Francisco one scares me only because which San Francisco are you going to get? Are you like, I think even the game the other day, maybe it was yesterday. Mike Tauchman out there 0 for 5 strikeouts, and then hits a 3-run home run in the 13th inning. So that game's like, you rarely see a 9-3 final score in an extra inning game, but that's what happened in that particular game. It was all over the place. So I'm in alignment with you that I put Smith as a 3 here. But I'm not too optimistic about that second outing.
Yeah, the thing with San Francisco, and I think you probably go through it a little bit, is when you look at your fantasy standings and you see, all right, where you are in home runs, and you're in the middle, and okay, who's leading? What do they have? And you go through their lineup, like, how are they leading this league in homers? But then you're looking,
baby.
Right. Well, I'm talking about your fantasy teams.
Yeah.
But then you're looking, it's like, well, I guess everybody has some, right? I mean, okay, they don't have the 18 or 19 right now, but everybody's got 11 or 10 or 9. They don't have any holes, and that's what San Francisco does. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got low double digits. You mentioned Tauchman, Yastrzemski, and they have become kind of like their partners across the bay, a Stratomatic type of team where they really play the matchups very well. And the Gabe Kapler narrative doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it's amazing what a good guy can do when he has a bullpen defense. Is not letting him down on a nightly basis. I mean, the other thing, I think if you look at that, I believe they're the only National League team with a triple-digit run differential this year too. And if we would have said that at the beginning of the season, no, there's no way. I mean, all the attention was on the teams down the, I guess it's Interstate 5. I always forget my roads in California, but all the attention was down there, and they had a great series this week too. But that's you look at what the Giants are able to do, and maybe they don't have a lot of quality, but they have a lot of quantity, and they can mix and match. Wilmer Flores is showing signs of doing some really nice things again. Darren Ruff is one of the better guys to use against left-handed pitchers, and they just really use their platoons and get around the fact that they don't have the DH, because some of those guys really belong as DHs, but they don't have that every night to their availability. But they're piecing together a very effective, and what we thought early on may have been just some noise. I mean, we're at the end of June now. They're still there. They're still in first place. Yeah. We got to treat them as a real thing. Yeah,
Donovan Solano has come off the IL and done the matchup part, and then there's Buster Posey. But when we did the first pitch between LA and San Francisco, I would fly it most of the time, but it took 1 year and drove it. And it was a lot nicer during the day than at night, the scene. Yeah. But anyway, Matt Peacock, the second pair of 2 starts, same matchup, St. Louis and San Francisco. What do you got there?
I mean, Tim, and this is the other thing that you got to consider with Smith too, and why I would say Peacock is a 2 to me is just Arizona doesn't win. They have lost so many games, and so really here you have to hope that if this is strikeouts or ratios that are going to carry the day for you, because the probability of a win is just not high.
Yeah.
With the Smith, at least he's got the proven track record of, like, he can do these things. Peacock, I'm not so sure. So I'm discounting Peacock a little bit just because, his value is all upon him because that the bullpen is not helping him out, and the offense is not helping him out. The probability of those, if you use both of these guys, and we're talking to you deep NL leaguers, because I doubt that people, maybe some deeper mixed leagues that'll use Smith. But if you're using both these guys in a 2-start week, you may get one win out of these 4 starts.
Yeah, that's the thing. I considered a 0 for Peacock, but the matchups are such that I'm going to give him a 1. But I can, at this point of the season, I can see where one may want to issue that. He may end up out of the top 100, which puts him as a 0 in my rankings. But I sometimes, depending on need, I can see overstepping that. Charlie Morton at the home against the Mets and then home against Miami. Shouldn't be a whole lot of talk here. He's a 5 in my book.
Yeah, same. And this, the same kind of comments that I made with Rich Hill earlier. This is a veteran. His best pitch is the breaking ball, and Charlie Morton has always been able to spin a good one. I'll admit I have not gone and looked at his in-game spin data of the last start or two because I don't care. Yeah, this is why he's good at what he does. I don't care. He's not one of the guys I'm worried about. And I know he had an effective start his last time out, but this is a 5. There's no reason to even think about sitting him, even though the Mets are getting a little better offensively here in Miami. Miami's such a boomer bust team. I mean, they're 8-9 games below 500, but they have a positive run differential. I guess it really depends on is Adam Duvall hitting a multi-home run game that game or not. He's one of the weird ones, 215 average, but he's got 15 bombs, 50 plus RBIs. He and Jesus Aguilar are just driving in runs left and right on that club. And you would think they'd be better in the standings, but they're getting ready to get into some sell mode here too, because that team is not young. I think the Gammons had a tweet this morning, something that Starlin Marte, and not Marte, he's on the block, but that Jazz Chisholm is their youngest player. Everybody in that roster is, and Chisholm, so they don't have a lot of guys under the age of 28. And so maybe it's time for them to move some things.
Hitters.
Yeah.
Their entire staff is under 20.
Right.
20. Hernandez at 25 is the older statement. Speaking of pitching on Miami, Edward Cabrera is crushing it on rehab, and we could see him soon. We'll get to Miami in a little while. Yeah, the thing with you mentioned the Pythag, they're like 3 games over 500 with their Pythag. I don't know the exact number, but their 1-run record is terrible, and a lot of that is the bullpen. And it would have been nice if they got a real closer. We may be talking about the Marlins being in the thick of the race here, but I'm not. If I were them, I wouldn't go in sell mode yet.
Yeah,
because they got the stuff, but I wouldn't be too surprised.
And guess who has the best one? Guess who has the best 1-run record in baseball?
Could that be the Rays?
That would be Seattle.
Oh, that's right. You know what? I knew that.
That would be Seattle who fluffed up those numbers on the Rays. Yeah. But Seattle's something like 18-7 in 1-run games this year.
Yeah. And as we won't get too deep in the weeds on a Friday morning, but a lot of that is the bullpen and the team itself. But there is a little bit of happenstance involved in 1-run games, and that's what the Pythag's all about. Miami, especially Yimi Garcia. My comment at the beginning of the year would have been nice, just because you want to get those young pitchers some wins. As it turned out, with a decent closer, they could be competing for the wild card. And with that staff, you just never know. All right, we're just delaying. We're vamping before we have to rank Thomas Eshelman over the Orioles. At Houston, at LA. If we're not allowed to go negatives, but we could if we want to. But he's a 0 for me.
Has to be. I mean, Baltimore, as bad as we said Arizona was, Baltimore's worse. I mean, I feel bad for Orioles fans because at the beginning of the season, you're like, hey, maybe they're going to be credible. It's not, they were never going to win the division. They're never going to compete, but they should have been annoying for teams. And they've had their issues. There's not, outside of John Means, there's no pitcher on this team I can legitimately put out there. In the bullpen, maybe, they've got a couple of options, but they just, if you're sitting there like, oh, I'm sitting on I'm going to sit on Tanner Scott. I'm going to sit on Paul Fry. You're looking for maybe one save opportunity a week. And it's just really tough to watch them. Hitting wise, they can still do it, but Houston just went in and just shillelagh'd. 26-3 was the runs against over a 3-game series, and now they get to go to Houston and do it all over again. That should be fun.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to Houston in a bit, but no, I'm with you with Baltimore. At the top of the order can do some damage. I don't know, DL Hall. I've got him in a couple of dynasty leagues. I don't like pitch. I don't pitch in Camden Yards, but I don't like pitchers that pitch in Camden Yards. It's tough to get a free agent to sign there.
Yeah,
we'll have to see what Baltimore ends up doing. But Eshelman, an easy 0 now. All right, we talked a little bit about Garrett Richards. Nick Pivetta also had 2 starts this week for the Red Sox. They start out home against the Royals and then go on the road to Oakland. And you've already given Richards your 0. You know what? I know my rankings aren't going to have him as 0 because they're not going to capture the whole. I don't have the spin thing, algorithm, lack of being able to use Spider Tact programmed in yet. I can always override it. I'm going to give him a 1 because I can just see in some where you're just so desperate, you need some good stuff. But I'm with you in that I don't like what I see. And I already mentioned that I think they should use him as an opener and stretch out Tanner Houck to – I didn't see what he did last night on the farm. I believe Houck started for the Red Sox last night to see what he may have done. The plan was for him to come up in the second half. We'll see what happens. You mentioned Duran. The Red Sox seem set on having him go to the Olympics. They want him to have that experience, him and Tristan Casas, who's with Portland. I don't think Columbia made it. I don't think Jeter Downs is going. I need to check on that. I apologize that I should know that. I'm actually for the Red Sox. I'm actually as excited for Jeter Downs to come up as I am for Duran. But I do think that Red Sox fan wants Duran up here yesterday. But
fantasy fan wants him up yesterday. Yeah. Rays fan, keep him down. Let him go to the Olympics. Hell, let him go on vacation. Let him go wherever Clay is at right now. By the way, Houck did not pitch for the Red Sox last. He may be pitching tonight.
Okay.
But last night it was Gonzalez pitched last night and got destroyed. But Duran did steal his 8th base this season. Also went 2 for 5. So his OPS is now 1,007 on the year.
And we're saying this, but I mean, no guarantee that he hits the ground running. So
see Jared Kelenic.
Yeah, exactly. So Nick Pivetta, you've already got your 4. Looked pretty good last night. Did not seem to be affected by the umpire checking his belt and whatnot. I'm going to go 4 as well. I think he's kind of a 3 pitcher, but the matchups are going to bring him to a 4, and we will agree there.
Yeah, I mean, with him, the only thing I would say is, in-game spin data, no change at all. Yeah, he was right along with his average. So it doesn't appear that he was either not doing anything or he just kept doing whatever he was doing. But you look at his ability to execute his pitches, particularly his breaking ball last night. His breaking ball was outstanding. It was as good as Richards was horrendous the night before. He was even working 96, 98, working that up in the zone and then getting the breaking ball off that. There's a reason why he threw no-hit baseball. And it wasn't like there were tremendous defensive plays behind him. He just pitched his butt off last night. And I was extremely impressed with how he did it. Let's not forget, it took him 11 decisions to get a loss. That's the way the season started. I'm always reminded of the story last year when they acquired him. They made the changes. They acquired him because they said they thought he could be, they were comparing him to another Glasnow, is how Kyle Bloom commented. When you watched the way he pitched last night, you saw it. So I was extremely impressed with what I saw yesterday from him. And again, the Oakland matchup, that one's tough, particularly in Oakland for that. But the Kansas City one should be nice for him because I did see him pitch Friday live in Kansas City, and he gave up that monster shot to Alberto Mondesi, who's shocking, is back on the IL again. Same team I have Duran on, so that's why I'm like, please come up. And so but that was really the only mistake he made. He was cruising, and then he just left one, and that one got destroyed with that. So the Kansas City matchup should be good for him because Ryan O'Hearn will not be able to poke one out out of Fenway the way he was in Yankee Stadium this past weekend.
Yeah, a little bit of a difference there. Yeah, and as far as the no-hitter and being taken out of the game at 100 pitches, Pivetta wasn't going to come out for the 8th anyway.
That's right.
And if they had a 2-0 lead, or maybe if Chavez didn't make the error, maybe Pivetta would have gotten a chance to close out the 7th. And it wasn't already at 100 with taking him out. I think it was more a matter of Alex Cora just seeing a walk previously and just not seeing what he wanted. And guess what, Red Sox fans, they didn't lose the game because of that. They got out of the inning, and
yep.
So
and Troy was coming up too. If people remember.
Oh,
the one good defensive play that happened for Pivetta was the previous time Troy was up. He hit one to the wall that Hunter Renfroe made a terrific play on, and that's how that no hitter had even gotten that far.
Yeah,
I mean, the expected batting average on that play was probably like 850, and Renfroe made a phenomenal running play on that one. In his revenge series, being homered in this series, and but he stole that hit, so that was the one good defensive play behind him. But that's do you want Choi facing Pivetta a third time when he made that quality contact the second time, and I believe decent contact I don't recall the first at bat, but I was. When I saw the decision, I'm like, that's the right move. And that should have been the right move. Because like you said, he was never going to go chase that no-hitter. I don't care what. And, maybe old school folks would be like, these guys cannot go the distance. Well, you don't want to Pivetta going 140 something pitches in June. It's not about the no-hitter. It's about the Cubs did a combined no-hitter, as we mentioned earlier, but it's about that was an important series, and that was the right move to make at that time. They could have left that series a game and a half up after being 2 weeks ago 4.5 back. Right. And so every one of these counts, and like we said, they got to face each other, another 13 times, 12 to 13 times here before the end of the season.
No, I agree. But, my Red Sox nation brethren will probably be trolling me, but that's fine.
Troll me too. Bring it.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle Hendricks, kind of like Charlie Morton at one point, we're like, what's going on? But kind of like Charlie Morton, just some early season blips. At Milwaukee, at Cincinnati, don't love the parks, but who cares? It's Kyle Hendricks. You put your 5 in, I'm going 5 as well.
Exactly. I mean, he's had 8 straight quality starts.
Yeah.
Until something flops. Yeah. No, I mean, he's he was on that bad run, but then 8 straight. I think his ERA is just like 290, whip is just above 1. I mean, he's been on a roll. You can't argue with the results. 8 straight quality starts. Yes, I mean, Milwaukee could go either way. You don't know how that lineup is. Sometimes you're out there, and maybe it just seems like when Brandon Woodruff's pitching, they don't give him enough run support on that. But that could go either way. The Cincinnati matchup, these matchups, both of these could go either way, and they could be disastrous. But the run he's on, I'm riding it until he falls off again.
Right, and he's doing his Kyle Hendricks things. On the other hand, we got Zach Davies with the same at Milwaukee, at Cincinnati. Yeah, last night's domination of the Los Angeles Dodgers aside, I always get scared with Davies out there. He could go out there and bat for you for 7 innings. He could also get 7 outs and give up 7 runs. Don't love these parks. I'm gonna give him a 2, but I'm not comfortable with it.
Yeah, I was waffling between a 2 and a 3. I'm just going to put a 3 only because, my story is, I sat him this week in an NL-only league where, wins are tight. I co-own a team and decided, you know what, he's got the Dodgers. I don't want to deal with that. Unfortunately, we left Carlos Martinez in the lineup instead. That was not good. But we're still in first place in this league somehow, despite decisions like that. With that, so we'll have to see where this goes. I mean, this would be a riskier play with the same matchups. But like I said, sometimes the Dodger matchup looked terrible on paper, and look what he did last night. So we'll see where that goes. But that one, when I woke up this morning, I was like, oh hey, Zach Davies. Oh man, that was on my bench. Oh man, we left Carlos Martinez in the lineup. Ouch. That guy. I mean, if we had Carlos Martinez on here, I'd have him as a 0. I can't.
I've been a fan over the years, but I'm just not seeing it this year. Cincinnati, Wade Miley, left-hander, home with Philadelphia, and home with the Cubs. We don't have any zeros yet. I'm not going to go 0 here, but I know that we do. We do Thomas Eshelman. There's usually and you get 0 for Garrett
Baltimore
Richards.
Is an easy
yeah,
0.
This is an interesting win. I don't love Miley, but when home is Cincinnati, it's not that great as far as park goes. But you're used to it. I'll give him a 2, but again, I'm not loving it.
So I'm going to give him a 3 again here, because if you're giving, and one of the matchups is against Davey. So like if you're giving Davey a 2, then that benefits Wiley, and that's kind of the push for me. I'm a long track record of the work that Derek Johnson does. And I know that there's been some other issues, but Wade Miley around the injuries has looked really good. And I'm kind of a Wade Miley fan because everybody else just kind of overlooks him. And I have him in a few places this year. And really, if Derek Johnson's the pitching coach for a team, I'm very interested. It's what got me on TJ Antone before Clay even was on him. You know, in that Rotowire mock draft we did in December, who took TJ Antone? I did. Yeah. And then he's like, man, he kept telling me that was my favorite pick. And I was like, I was just kind of surprised he was still there in the 23rd with you in the league. But I took him in the 23rd and been very happy with that.
You know what? I have a feeling what's going to happen is Miley's going to end up in the 3 range because he's been going into game. He's been given not big length, but he's not a 5 and fly kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And in today's MLB, that's huge. You mentioned quality starts before. People like poo-poo quality starts. To me, I'm more interested in the 6th inning part of the quality start than I am the 3 earned runs part.
Yes. Yep.
And you say 5 quality starts. In my mind, I hear he went 6 innings 5 times in a row. And that means something in today's game. So, we can argue about, a 4.5 ERA is not quality. Well, look at the average quality starts around 2.8 ERA. So let's you got to set the limit somewhere. But anyway, Eli Morgan, home against Detroit. Okay. Home against Houston. Not so okay. Also, JC Mejia has got the same, and he's now JC. You probably don't do quite as much database stuff, but he went from Giancarlos to now he's JC in ESPN everywhere else where you have to put the name correctly for it to be captured by the link. He's now JC Mejia. So I spent a good 5 minutes of my life changing all my databases. Thanks, JC. All good though. Eli Morgan. We like to give Cleveland credit for making something out of nothing. I just don't see it with Morgan, especially with that Houston start. I'm giving him a 0. I'm scared of Houston.
And I honestly, the same thing applies to both guys for me. And as a JC, I do appreciate JC changing his name. But the thing here is Houston. That's scary enough. But Detroit is no longer a pushover offense. Right, you look at them, they're above 500 team since May 1st. Jonathan Scope, I made the comment on Twitter the other day. I think Jonathan Scope's our new Edwin Encarnacion. You look at April, and he was non-existent, which if you ever owned Encarnacion, that's what happened in April. And then May he would start to heat up, and then June he would get hot. And go look at Jonathan Scope. I think he was hitting $150 in April. And then, May he starts getting hot. He's continuing to hit in June here, but that offense, they can put up some numbers now, and they're more competitive than we ever thought they were going to be. If we go back and look at April, so for me, both of these, I want to put both of these guys as 0 because Detroit could do something, and we know Houston's going to do something the way they've hit. So I really don't want to part with either one of these guys this week.
Yeah, I'll get to Mejia. So you mentioned Scope. I actually wrote about him in this week's Z-Files, which went up this morning. As far, I think I titled it in case you missed it, just being some players that started out slow and are now mixed league worthy. Scope is doing something that he did back in 2017, his previous, his best year, in that he's being more selective. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is the next year went back to being more free swinging. And I like the Encarnacion comp, not only just because of what you talked about, but in my mind, both of them are sort of, they're free swingers, but they make good contact. So they didn't strike out nearly as much as, when you think when you see or hear their names.
That's right.
And Scope's doing the same things he did in 2017, his career year. So I do like him to continue. Mejia, I think there's a little pedigree there. I think there's a little something going on there, and he's starting to go deeper into the games. I'm gonna give him a 1. I don't think I have him anywhere to put my money where my mouth is. That's sort of the ultimate test. But it's more of out of a recognition that he's just not a token opener anymore. There's a little something there.
I got you.
Yeah. All right. This one should be easy. We got Kyle Freeland home against Pittsburgh and home against St. Louis. And home, of course, is Coors Field. Don't hate Pittsburgh. Don't hate the Pittsburgh. I don't hate either matchup. If it was anybody, I was going to say it was anybody but Kyle Freeland, but I don't know who won that. Maybe John Gray or obviously Herman Marquez.
Yeah, John Gray's pitching better at home than he is on the road.
Yeah. I haven't checked lately, but he was for the first, yeah. Looking at these matchups again, oh man, I don't want to say what a conundrum because it's not that big of a conundrum, but I'm gonna go those matchups though. I'm gonna go 1, and I'm gonna regret it.
That's where I was.
As opposed to the automatic 0,
That's kind of the same way. It's like with the matchups are the only reason we're even considering this.
Yeah,
obviously. And I agree. In the deepest of leagues, if you're really hurt and if you've lost a few guys, let's say you're one of the unfortunate Aaron Savali owners who, you just lost him for 5 to 6 weeks with the finger injury. A guy in my home league has lost Glasnow and Savali in the past week. That's rough. And so like if you're in a league, you're like, okay, I got to look at something. This is what's out there. I would still take Marquez over Freeland. But they're not automatic 0s to me with this. Yeah. They're still in consideration because of these matchups.
I'm going to go 3 on Marquez. I just think that because of the matchups, I know it's Coors Field. I haven't checked. Actually, Coors was going through a stretch last week where it was in the 90s, which I'm just. And the other
weather's all over the place this year. When I was in KC last Friday, it was 100. Here in the Charlotte area, we haven't hit 90 in about a week, and we're not projected to hit it for another week, which is extremely unusual. So it's like the East Coast over here in the Piedmont area, we have some really nice early May weather, whereas everybody else in the country seems to be roasting.
Yeah, we're up in New England. We're little, it's comfortable at night. It gets a little sticky during the day, but weather has been a little bit weird. Lucas Giolito and Dylan Cease, a pair of 2 starts this week. We're scheduling for the White Sox, home against Minnesota, and at Detroit. We talked about Detroit being a little bit better offense, a little pesky offense. Giolito, I think he's still in the 5 range for me.
Yep.
Although is that really Lucas Giolito in that MLB commercial? That's not what I pictured Lucas Giolito to be. But anyway, Dylan Cease. At one, maybe this time next year when you're filling in for Clay, he's in that automatic 5 range. He's showing signs of it, but he's also showing that he's still young and prone to lapses of wildness and command and control issues. I'll go 4 for Cease. I'm just not confident enough to go 5 yet.
Yeah, again, he's somebody that you should put on your homework list to watch to see how he's working under the new rules, because his last outing was quite a dip from where things were. So it's in particular his 4-seam fastball lost just over 200 RPMs in the rules. So that was his first. So like I would have had him as a 4. I'm putting him as a 3. I need to watch another start or 2 before I'm confident, because I think right now, and it isn't this whole thing as we've talked about, I don't think it's future path. It's just, this is the learning curve. Everybody adjusts to something, and this is the learning curve. So how are these guys, like, I don't want to write Richards, getting back to Garrett Richards, we can't completely write them off. But if we watch these 2 starts this week and they're much like what we just saw with Tampa, then you can. Then you're like, okay, bye. That's 3 in a row. He can't command the curveball. I don't know how he's going to stay in the rotation because they have a good option behind them. For the White Sox, it's not like they're going to cut Cease out of the rotation, and not like, in AAA here in Charlotte, they've got Ronaldo Lopez and they have Mike Wright, who was pitching really well in I think it was Korean League. Well, Mike Wright's doing really well in AAA right now as well, so they have the option to do something to bring along there. But starting pitching is not Chicago's problem. But we're in that learning curve phase to see how these guys are going to adjust right now to pitching under the new rules. And Cease is one of those guys that I have on my homework list to watch to see how he's going to command his stuff.
Yeah, and he has high spin rates in general.
Yeah,
and I did a piece where I compared historical spin rates. He hasn't had enough seasons to qualify, at least in the chart, to throw enough pitches. So my homework on Cease was just falling in general because I didn't know what the baseline was. I didn't know if it has been going up over the years because Bloom, there it is. We get nothing to compare it to. You'd like to think that since he's so younger, maybe he hasn't been subject to some of the veterans nudge, wink, wink, come over here, let's talk, kid. So maybe it is more natural, but we'll see. Another nudge, wink, wink kid, Matt Manning, home against Cleveland. I'm sorry, on the road against the Indians, and then home against the White Sox we just talked about. Manning was interesting. I was confusing with Dane Dunning for a moment. Manning is I don't know if Dunning's on the list, but I'm impressed with Dane Dunning. Manning, he was not doing nothing on the farm. I know he's a very highly rated prospect, and not taking away from the possible career, but he looked terrible on the farm. Come up to the majors, and you'd think he was a seasoned veteran. It just kind of, especially in today's game where the rookies are not translating very well at the very beginning. But you've gone in with your two. I'll let you talk about it, but I'm there as well. I was skeptical when he came up because of the terrible early start with Toledo. But I like what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a composed kid. Don't love either matchup, but I'm there with it too.
Yeah, and the matchup's really what's driving it. And when you look at why he was terrible in the minors this year, it was the home runs. And that's when you look at his home run rate, he gave up 11 home runs in 32 and a third inning in AAA. That's what was killing him.
It's hard to do.
And it's really tough to do, but he was doing it. And so that's where he was getting hurt. But historically, he didn't have that. He didn't have that track record, in AA, 7 home runs in 133 innings. So he all of a sudden got crazy. And I don't know if the winds were blowing out there in Toledo. I don't know where he was playing the games, but that's what was driving things. And so, I believe in his future. I just don't believe in his immediate future right now. These matchups are a little scary to me. And so I have him as a 2. I, again, don't want to fully dismiss him, but there are risks associated here with putting this 2-start week in your lineup.
There shouldn't be too much risk with Zach Greinke home against Baltimore and at Cleveland. Until shown otherwise, he's still a 5 for me.
Exactly. Gotta love those bets. There's value in those bets, and there's not a lot of sexy upside. But my goodness, is there very little downside.
There's always someone who doesn't want to be a year too late. Yeah. And one of these years they're going to say, "Ha ha!" Do a victory lap. They were right, forgetting about the 8 years they were wrong. So that's Danny Duffy, Kansas City at Boston, home against Minnesota, coming off. Actually, I thought he was going to come off the IL.
He did. He pitched Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay, so when you used to do the daily note. I think I actually replaced you for daily notes on ESPN.
You did.
Thank you, by the way. It's been very good to me. But when I'm doing an update for one day's notes, doing that day's notes, and preparing the template for the next day's notes. These things all run in your head.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so he has one outing under his belt. It wasn't very long. I love what Danny Duffy was doing pre-injury.
Same.
Increase the strikeout rate, working up in the zone, mixing up the pitches. I love what he was doing, and I think he'll get back if he's healthy. I just don't know if this is the week he's going to do it.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I have him as a 2 only because I'm not sure he's going to get 5 innings with it. I mean, the matchups should be decent enough for him. again, Boston, it could be boom or bust. One of the things when you look at Boston, when you think lefty pitcher, you automatically hone in on JD Martinez's track record against lefties. He's in a bit of a slump right now. When you look at his power potential.
Yeah.
So that's something to focus on. And Minnesota, that's obviously a very attractive matchup. But Duffy, he was on a 40 pitch limit against New York when he pitched on Wednesday. I can't see him going from 40 to 100 over the span of 3 starts. And so for me, it's probably a 40, a 60, and maybe an 80. So for him to get it would be highly unlikely he's going to get a win out of either of these, and it may not be enough strikeouts or ratio to really matter much. So I'm not saying bench him, but set your expectations, because I just don't expect him to go deep in either one of these games to qualify for that win.
Yeah, for sure. Brad Keller may not go deep enough to qualify for the win either, but it's not because of the pitch limit. It's because he's not very good. And he's I was on the Keller bandwagon. I mean, if there really is such a thing as more of a one man red wagon, but Keller crushed me in April. Started to come back. Crushed me again his last 3 starts. Maybe it's because I want him to do well. I'm thinking of giving a 1. But I can't do it. I'm going to go 0 with you.
Yeah, I put him as a 0. I mean, when you think about like yesterday's matchup against the Yankees, one thing, if there's a problem the Yankees have had this year for the most part, is like right-hander slider pitchers. And it's like Keller should have been like, okay, this should be a decent matchup. And he barely made it out of the first inning. And last year was fun. If you had him last year, I think I had him for $2 in multiple leagues, and that was fun. In a short season, anything was possible. But that has not played out. Even if you look at the way the numbers, or maybe it was 19. There was the one good Brad Keller year I had him, and that was nice. But I moved him. In fact, in one league, my home league, I traded Brad Keller to get Danny Duffy. That was fun until the injury. So that's where I look at. But I can't. I just because I did watch some of that game on Wednesday. And I immediately regretted using him in DFS because I was like, I'm going to be cheap. I'm going to take him here. I had Chris Bassett as my other guy. I'm like, yeah, this will work. No. So, yeah, no, I'm done.
Yeah, speaking of done,
we
got Dylan Bundy at the Yankees and versus Baltimore. And
even the revenge game factor, I don't even think it's going to play out well here.
for me, early on, the narrative was he looked really good. Then he ran into, I believe, the Red Sox and the Dodgers, and they're going to beat up a lot of pitchers.
That's right.
And I expected him to rebound. He hasn't rebounded. And nope. I think I tweeted the other night, and Clay didn't get this, so maybe you will. I don't know. But I haven't been so wrong about a Bundy since I wasn't into Kelly when I was younger.
How did Clay not get that?
I don't know. But anyway.
My goodness.
But become
one of the best shows ever.
With writer Matthew Berry, did not.
And Marcy Darcy went to my high school.
There we go. Wow. I didn't watch the show. I just became a bigger Christina Applegate fan later in life. A late life crush. LLC. Anyway, Bundy. Gosh, you'd want it. I don't know if I can go 0, and I look at these matchups and I'm going to go 0.
Well, sometimes to loop in a previous discussion, the best trades you make, the best trades sometimes are the ones you don't make. Right after that Boston and Dodgers, when they were just shellacking, I was like, you know what? I think his ERA at that point was like 6.10. In my home league, and there was a team I needed starting pitching. I had just lost Duffy, and I have a lot of power in this league, and so I offered Justin Upton straight up for Bundy and was declined. Like, no, I'm going to stick with Bundy, and this guy is still suffering in home runs. Meanwhile, Upton got a little hot, and I'm glad I've avoided the 19 earned runs that Bundy has given up over the 5 starts during that time. So his ERA has not gotten any better, although his last outing against Detroit, we talked about them earlier, he pitched around some trouble, 7 base runners in 4 innings, and only allowed 1 earned run there. But that was the highlight for him. And so that's where it's no thanks. I just can't use him this week.
Yeah, I mean, my theory is if in order to make up for the bad Dylan Bundy, you need the good Dylan Bundy, and either you start him or you drop him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm dropping him. I mean, I have him in a few 12, and well, I don't play a lot of few. I think I have 112. He now is droppable, and someone's going to pick him up, and he's going to get it together. But with especially in FBC, with reserve spots being so valuable, I don't think I can sit on him. And I have not done enough of a deep dive, pitch mix and velocity and everything else to know actually what's going on. I just don't know. I just don't like what I'm seeing. Trevor Bauer, you know, I think he's still a 5. He's obviously worth watching. He may not be the 14th, 15th overall Trevor Bauer pick anymore, but I still think he's worthy of a 5.
I agree. I mean, what did he give up? 2 home runs, the first 2 batters the other night against San Diego. But it's also the second time in 5 outings that he's given up 3 home runs. He did it with the Cardinals, and then even before that against Houston, 2 home runs. But that's just a normal game against Houston these days. So the long ball is really what's been hurting him. Everything else is still in play. I mean, he's still pitching 6+ innings, as we talked about that earlier. He's money in the bank. Only 1 time this year has he not gone at least 6. He's still getting his strikeouts. It's just you really have to look at what's going to happen. Even the ratios have been, WHIP has been in decent shape. Neither of those were against San Diego, but San Diego, they're on a heater and they're getting it done. When you look at the matchups this week, we've discussed the Giants. The Nationals are, quietly back in contention. They've won 10 of their last 11 games.
500, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And we were talking about them as sellers 2 weeks ago. I guess they read the memo and they were like, no. And they've gotten hot and they're winning games again. And maybe they're going to add because Mike Rizzo has never been one to dump. Mike Rizzo, if you're hanging around, I'll go get you the pieces that we need. I don't know what their budget's like or where they're against the cap, but they're back in, and at least go look at it. Anybody, if we said Miami shouldn't sell and they're 7 games below 500, then the Nationals definitely shouldn't either. And so they've been able, and Kyle Schwarber, as long as he's hitting a home run every game, the way he's turned into a leadoff hitter out of nowhere like this, it's been fun to watch what they're doing, and I think it's been kind of quiet. It's kind of weird to have an East Coast team quietly get this hot. And maybe it's because just the Astros are just doing what they're doing. Everybody's talking about that again. But the Nationals have quietly started to rebuild the 2019 script. Yeah,
I was going to say, they don't have to, the coach doesn't have to say, think about what the Washington Nationals did a couple years ago. All they got to do is point to, look at the ring.
That's right.
That's the reminder. Miami, we've talked a little bit about their offense. Nothing wrong with their pitching. Lefty Rogers at Philly, at Atlanta. Don't love either matchup, but I do love Rogers. That whole staff has been impressive. No secrets there. It might end up being a 4 on the rankings just because there's a lot of 2-start pitches this week that push people up. And if I go to my 1 to 20, 21 to 40, it might turn out to be a 4, but I'm starting him.
Yeah, put him in the Dylan Cease category with me. Do your homework. Because his last start, the spin rate on his slider was down over 300 RPMs. So you look at his spin rate, it was down. So he's on the homework list for me. Okay. And so I want to go back and I put Cease a 3. I'm putting Rogers a 3. And I've liked Rogers this year, but I want to see the learning curve because that was quite a noticeable dip. And so it bears watching.
All right. No, that makes perfect sense. A couple of really good starters from Milwaukee. Both have got home against the Cubs and at Pittsburgh. Freddie Peralta, the first one, and Brandon Woodruff, the second one. I'm going to make it easy. We don't have to stop like Clay. Clay had to stop after an hour to get ready for Sirius XM. But not only is Clay not here this week, we've switched to football and Rotowire on Fridays now. So I'm not even going to do my spot at 1 p.m. But we can continue. We don't have to cut it off at an hour. We continue going. But to make it easy, I'm going 5 for both Peralta and Woodruff.
No argument. I mean, the results, it's just like, forget it. I mean, like I said, the only thing, it'd be nice if the run support were a little more consistent in Milwaukee, because I've seen some outings where both these guys have taken some tough losses with this, but it's kudos to, and I guess this would be credit to the pitching factory that they set up in Arizona and put these guys through, because we're talking about 2 guys that a year and a half ago we were saying, oh, these guys are relievers. These guys are relievers. And now they're front end starters.
For sure. Bailey Ober from Minnesota. There's got to be one of those airplane jokes in there. Ober, but we'll leave that for Erickson. So we got Minnesota with Bailey Ober and Jose Barrios. At the White Sox, at Kansas City. Ober's one of those guys where, I didn't like the numbers, but I think he's pitched maybe a little better than I expected. So I don't want to let first impressions crush me on this one. I'm pretty, Barrios. I'm not the only one that looking for that next level with Barrios, more because it just looks like it should be there, as opposed to go to a StatCast page and look at that. I don't know what to hang my hat on other than, gosh, when I watch this guy pitch, he should be better. Maybe this is what we got, and it's not bad. Barrios is going to be a 5. Ober, I'm going to go 1, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, surely I can't go under that. I'm also going to do a 1. I honestly have the same grades on both pitchers.
All right. The Mets. The Mets, all right, so they have a doubleheader. Is it today or tomorrow? Today. They're still 7 or 8 fewer games than the Padres in Oakland, teams that have played nearly all their games. That's just silly.
That's crazy.
It's just, it's the weather. They did run into a COVID scenario.
Yeah.
But yeah, and as far as strategically goes, I love the pitchers in a 7-inning game because, you cut out the 2 middlemen. You go right to the closer if necessary. The hitters, though, it's taking a chance just because they may not play both games. And if you only play one, you may be short 1 plate appearance. So I don't know that strategically you want to load up on the Mets because they played so fewer games. Marcus Stroman, single 2-start guy for the Mets this week at Washington and at New York. Don't love either matchup. Don't love either park. But Stroman, right? I don't think he gets blown up. He may not have a 12 strikeout 7-inning performance, but he's above average for me, which means he's above a 3. Does he get to the 4 level? That's on the road. I'm gonna give him a 3, but I wouldn't be surprised if he pitches better.
My only concern is, he left the last start with hip issue after an inning, right? The MRI came back clean.
Right.
But ahead of that, he faced the Padres back-to-back, the Cubs. He got 8, 7, and 6 strikeouts in that. Gave up 5 earned runs over 19 innings. Like, he was pitching phenomenal baseball. And then leaves after an inning with a sore hip. The MRI came back clean. And so, I'm only saying a 2 because of the risk. Like, if he has a flare-up on that first one, then he misses the second game. Exactly. So that's the risk. That's a risk factor. And I want to bake that in to this because of that factor. Otherwise, without that, I would be in agreement with you as a 3.
Yep. Excellent. All right. Michael King and Jameson Taillon, home against the Angels and home against the Mets. If you're chasing wins, I suppose King needs to be a non-zero, but I don't love it. I don't love it at all. I'll go a 1 for King. Taillon to me seems to be average. I know he's pitched well, but I think we may hear the word homework again in a moment with Taillon. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'll give him a 3.
You said King. I think you said 1 for King. The problem with King, he's one of these guys, like, you watch him pitch and you want to say, man, he's bad. He's got good stuff. But the problem, he just can't get deep into a game. He has qualified for a win exactly twice this year. He has 0 wins. Look over, on the beginning of the season, he threw 6 shutout innings against Toronto. And then against Boston at the beginning of this month, he went 5 1/3, 6 hits, 4 runs, no walks, but he just doesn't get deep in the game. He doesn't miss enough bats, a lot of foul contact, different types of things. And so, it felt like he was pitching that game on Wednesday night that we referred to earlier. But that's the thing with King. You watch him pitch and you want to think he's going to be better, but right now he's just not. And the fact that he doesn't get deep enough for a game to qualify for a win, and he misses bats, to me, he's a 0 to me because I don't see the upside with it. Yeah, that's where I am. And with Tyon, I've never been a huge guy. He keeps proving me wrong. I thought, like even yesterday, I thought that the KC matchup would be one that he may get beat up on a little bit, and he did extremely well with that. So I got to give him a 3 because he keeps proving me wrong. But I would definitely put him on my homework list.
Yeah, King, I think the Yankees are doing a decent job protecting him and not letting him get that blow-up outing when he's a little bit of trouble in the 3rd or 4th or even the 5th. He gets lifted pretty quick, and I think that's part of it. And he doesn't have, yes, I'm a Red Sox fan, but I'm a baseball fan too. I like David Garcia. I'd like to see him in that spot, but maybe by the end of the season we will.
I have him on the same league. I have him in tout as well.
There we go. So Oakland, James Kaprielian, the lone 2 start, home against Texas, home against Boston. Pedigree got hurt, kind of, I don't want to call him post-hype because never really had the first run, but got to be impressed with Kaprielian has done so far. Again, a lot of pitchers with 2 starts this week. So I can't go 5, but I'm going to go 4, and I'm starting him. I mean, he's I'm not. There's no hesitation starting him.
I would agree. Especially with the benefit of pitching at home.
Yeah.
I really like these matchups this week, just because it's at home and he's got the expansive territory. We know what Oakland's capable of. Again, one of the more quiet. So they were in first place until the Astros got on this crazy heater, but a team that nobody really projected to do what they were doing this year. And until like 3 days ago, we're in first place.
Yeah. And we talked a little about Houston. We didn't talk a lot about pitching because it was just Greinke. Everybody talks about their offense. Man, Louis Garcia, James Urquidy, and Christian Javier is now out of the bullpen. They've quietly put together quite a pitching staff.
Yep.
And I'm forgetting one. I'm leaving Framber Valdez, of course.
Yes.
So they've quietly assembled, and Jake Odorizzi. I keep saying joke. Maybe that's a Freudian slip. I don't know, but he's kind of pitching just well enough to keep his job. But we'll see what goes on there. We had a comment in the chat earlier that Vince Velasquez would make a good opener. Maybe, but right now he's starting. He's got at Cincinnati and home against San Diego. Talk about, I don't want to say proving me wrong, but I just this is the year they're going to make him a reliever and he starts. And it just, you just never know. The answer with Velasquez, they changed the question. Inconsistent. Don't love the matchups. I'm going to go 1, but I'm not comfortable.
I'm very comfortable saying 1.
Yeah.
Well, I really am, because I agree with the comment. It wasn't me making that comment in the chat, but I would agree with that as well, because there are another guy. Watch him pitch. You see some things. You're like, man, if he could only, and you maybe have to set some guys up for success, because when you try to look at, okay, is he going to work as a starter? Again, he doesn't get too deep in the games. He over the last outside of that outing against Boston. Where maybe it was a relief outing because it was only an inning a third, but he is typically a 17 to 21 batter face guy. With that, he's going to have his problem with walks. He's never really able to avoid those, and he gives up his fair share of hits. So WHIP is a problem. Ratio, the ERA has been a problem. I mean, he's just multiple runs scored outside of that 6 shutout against Miami. And that's where it is. So if you're starting him, you're hoping for strikeouts. That's really his one upside right now, that he pretty consistently delivers to that. And so if you're trying to set him up for success, maybe that's the role to use him in, is to use him as a multi-inning opener, not just the first inning, the first and second, and then get him out with that. But to me, I'm very comfortable putting him as a 1, because he may go, he's going to have to start both these games. Maybe he gets a win out of one of them, but I'm not seeing much.
Maybe he's a better primary pitcher that trusting Joe Girardi to get him out of there, when he's in trouble. Maybe if he is pitching well, you don't want to just, take him out because you have to. So maybe he's a better primary pitcher and trust Girardi's experience to know how to manage it. We'll see. We'll move up a little bit quicker here. We may have time, but you folks listening may not. So we'll move through. We'll bust through these the last few a little bit quicker here. Spencer Howard, 2 starts, home against Miami, home against San Diego. Still like the guy's future, but I'm going 0 now, but it doesn't mean I don't like next year. It doesn't mean I don't like him for going forward.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. Pittsburgh, this probably shouldn't take long, although after Chad Kuhl's performance last night, may change things, but Chase DeJong and Kuhl at Colorado, home against Milwaukee. At Colorado's tough. I mean, if we want, we could have made a play for either one for a low mark if it was home in Pittsburgh, but I can't go higher than 0 for either one with that Colorado start. And even
the other one's Milwaukee. It's like no.
And even though Colorado's not near the squad that they've been in the past, Coors Field is still Coors Field. It's still undefeated, unfortunately. Interesting here with San Diego. We can take a little time talking about Blake Snell at Cincinnati, at Philadelphia. Don't love either matchup. Couple of parks, which and Snell's had some homer issues. It's almost FOMO though. It's still Blake Snell. He's showing signs of getting it together lately. I'm going to go 2. For a guy that you would have typed in 5 without even thinking this time last year.
Yeah, it's crazy to see where things have been. I mean, he's his own worst enemy. That's the problem. He just doesn't. It would be nice if some of the same critiques. It's like if you don't want to tell a guy to pitch for contact, but don't be in such a rush to get the strikeouts on guys. Let him put the ball in the play, but it feels like sometimes like he's getting deep in these counts because he's trying to come up with the put away pitch. Whereas trust your stuff and trust your defense behind you, and he's got a good defense behind him. But until he can put together consecutive starts, I can't grade him any higher than a 2 here.
Yeah. So next up for Seattle, Chris Flexen at Toronto versus Texas. Showed signs early on of improving his strikeouts and did a little bit, then fell back. But sure enough, he's kind of bouncing back a little bit, showed what he did earlier in the season. You don't love that Toronto care. I don't care if it's at Toronto, even if they're playing in Jellystone, whatever the joke is, I'm still scared with that Toronto lineup. You don't mind the Texas start. I see you have a 2. I'm gonna share the 2 with you. You cross your fingers that you get through Toronto unscathed, and then you make up for it home against Seattle.
Right. I mean, the Toronto start in Salem Field is the tax you pay for enjoying this week's start against the Rockies in Safeco. Like, he was a sexy pickup this week because of that matchup. I mean, there's been a lot of work done on how poorly the Rockies performed the series immediately after leaving Coors for a while, and that was Seattle. And so, Flexen had a no decision in that game, but he pitched well with it. And so, I streamed Flexen this week, but this is the tax you pay if you're going to keep him. Then you got this start at Salem Field against Toronto, but then you get to come back against Texas, and that offense is wildly inconsistent. It becomes either average or very poor. And against righties, a guy like Nick Solak, just terrible against right-handed pitching this year, so that helps neutralize them a bit. Adolis Garcia has been sometimes multi-home run games, sometimes invisible, up and down type of thing. So I'll take that Texas matchup, which is why I'm giving them the 2, because the Toronto one could be a little scary, but the Texas one should be really nice. Yeah.
Anthony Desclafani at the Dodgers, at Arizona. Another love one, don't love the other matchup. Desclafani, though, gets the strikeouts. And the Dodgers, you know what? I mean, they're scary, but I don't think you have to just categorically avoid them like we've done. I mean, we're joking with Zach Davies last night. I'm going to go – you've got a 4. I want to go 4, but it may be – I'm going to go 4. I'm going to ignore the fact that with so many good starters, he may get pushed down, but we're going 4.
Yeah, and the risk, I mean, Desclafani's been awesome this year. That's been the fun thing, because you talk about things that are just freely available out there. He was easily end game material sitting out there, and I picked him up in many places. He's had 15 starts this year, 8 wins, 2.77 ERA. The one bad outing he had was against the Dodgers. Put a 10 spot on him, a 2 2/3, and that was a month ago. So it was still recent, and that's why, like, if the Dodgers matchup wasn't on here, this would be a 5 for me. I'm to the point where Disco, he's just 5 for me. But that's why I put it as a 4, because that outing is it's the only time he's gotten beat up all year, and it was that night, and so that's why I've got to put a 4 here.
Yeah, he's just lucky that we already had the word Gombert in a lexicon, or it would be Desclafani. We talked about Carlos Martinez earlier, or kind of more just commiserated about Carlos Martinez earlier. John Gant, Carlos Martinez. Gant, the regression monster, didn't just visit; it pretty much punched Gant in the face. And the Arizona start you like, you hate the Colorado start. I'm gonna go 0 for Gant. Do I go 0 for Martinez? He's pitching the way he's pitched lately. How can you not?
Yeah, the regression monster has declared eminent domain in John Gant's statistics, and we all knew it was coming. When you looked at it, you're like, wait, how do you have an ERA of 150 with a WHIP who's almost higher than your ERA? It's like, if anybody had been fortunate, it was him. You knew it was coming, and the fact that he's given up 18 earned runs in his last 14 innings. And the matchups: Cincinnati, Cubs, Atlanta, and Detroit. So everybody's been putting a beating on him. But yeah, the Luck Dragons took eminent domain and said, "Never mind, dude. We're taking this one over." And I don't know. And this is why, if St. Louis is going to stick around, but they've fallen into 4th place because the NL Central is still competitive too. They've got to get something to fix both these guys, because honestly, I don't know how either of these guys can be in anybody's lineup right now.
No, I agree. Tampa does not have a 2-start pitcher schedule.
Only 5 games. Yeah, only 5 games this week.
5 games. We'll skip down to the Rangers. Mike Fultonevich at Oakland, at Seattle. Love the ballparks, although Texas is a good ballpark itself. First thing I do with Fultonevich is think about the left-handed batters on the respective teams. Oakland scares me. Seattle not as much, but that just goes what kind of teams they are. I can't, it's not a 1 or it's not a 5 either. Okay, Zola, what is it? I'm going to go 2. But I don't. It's like a knuckleballer. I don't want to watch the games.
Yeah, it's true, because when you watch, honestly, if I were just to go on the eye test, he'd like be a 0, maybe a 0.5 for me, because maybe I just watched his bad starts. But then his start this week against Oakland, 6 innings of 2-run baseball, no walks. Yeah. And so like he handled himself well against Oakland, but then he got beat up. Seattle, well, not exactly beat up. So like if you go back and look at historical matchups against Oakland and Seattle, like he's held his own in both of those. So like using that kind of recency bias, I should say I'm a little higher, but I've watched some of his other outings and I'm like, oh God, this is awful. I don't understand how this is working, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt only because recent success against both of these recent success here, and give him a 2 as well.
Robbie Ray, been one of the more interesting stories of the first half. Suddenly can't walk anybody, but still giving up homers. Home against Seattle, home against Tampa, again, home being Buffalo Salem Field. I guess we'll let you go first this time.
He's honestly almost in the 5 category. I mean, the problem, he's giving up home runs, but there are also a lot of solo shots because he's not walking a lot of dudes. And that's what always killed him in the past. Was the free passes and then the home runs. So the home runs haven't exactly gone away, and they're not going to go away. And they weren't going to go away in Dunedin. They're certainly not going to go away in Salem. He's only had 2 starts all year without allowing a home run. But his last 4, just one of them. He's only had 1 multi-homer game over the past 7 starts, and that was at Yankee Stadium. Go figure. Guessing one of those was a cheapie. Just because at least 1 home running game in that joke of a park is a cheapie. I digress. So I mean, to me, he's 4, but he's pretty close to a 5 because his matchups against the last time he faced Tampa Bay was I watched that game and it felt a lot worse than 7 innings, 1 run, and 7 strikeouts and 0 walks. Honestly, it felt much like the game against the White Sox where he struck out 13. with that. And the Seattle matchup should be nice for him as well. So if I could do a half grade, I'd go 4.5. But love Robbie Ray this year.
DVR used to allow half grades, so you need a more congenial host there. DVR used to let half grades. Eric Fetty, he falls into my early on, was throwing more strikeouts, kind of went away from it, but has kind of come back a little bit lately, showing some of that good stuff again. Home against the Mets, home against the Dodgers, not a 0. I'm debating between 1 and 2. Where are you at with Fetty?
Yeah, not a 0 either. I'm going to put it down as a 2. The funny thing is, one of the commenters in my most recent piece was like, "Hey, you mentioned all these good pitchers, and you left off Fetty, who's had 3 consecutive scoreless outings." And then the Phillies were like, "Yeah, about that," and then laid some runs on him. But that joke aside, you still look at his recent outings. 3 of his last 4 scoreless, with 14, 23, 5 earned runs over 23 innings, and strikeouts have been there. And he's it's a 2, but I think that's about as high as I'd ever rank Eric Fetty. I mean, he's a guy that I saw sitting out there in a lot of free agent piles in NL leagues and wasn't even drafting him. But he's surprised me a bit, but I think this is as high as you'll ever see me grade Eric Fetty.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of surprises, Joe Ross last night surprised me. I had an opportunity to insert him into the ESPN Daily Notes as a streamer, but I opted not to do it. I think Lester was scheduled to start, and they flip-flopped, and Mike Sheets, who wrote the original notes, had Lester as a starter. We had to take him out because he wasn't starting, and I could have put Ross in, but I was like, nah, I don't like this start. Well, I should have put Ross in. It would have looked smart. Home against Tampa, home against the Dodgers. Nationals Park is a sneaky offensive park. We talk about Baltimore a lot of because of the weather. I think people don't realize some of which an offensive park Nationals Park is. I'm going to go 2 again for Ross, but I'm going to go 2 more out of just kind of I'm afraid to be wrong again.
Yeah, I mean, a similar storyline approaches with as with Fetty, because 3 of Ross's 4 last outings are now scoreless. 7 shutout against the Marlins, 8 shutout against the Giants, and then 6 shutout, 4 unearned runs came against the Phillies with that, and then the Mets got to him with a couple of home runs and such. So the Mets got to him, but the same thing. So similar story. So I'm gonna put a 2 down for Ross, only because it lines up very well to the Fetty stuff. But Ross obviously has a little better stuff than Fetty, just from what I've observed in the past. But eventually, this winning streak, all good things must come to an end. And so, the way the Nationals are on this roll, and these guys have been able to stick around and pick up some of these decisions. Ross has got 2 of them out of his last 4, but previously had not won anything. It had like 7 straight outings without a win. So all good things must come to an end, and that's going to happen here soon with the Nationals. And with decisions going out the board, with Ross at least, he has the ability to get you some strikeouts.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what I was thinking of yesterday morning by not adding. I mean, Miami, he had the previous start was kind of a little blip, Ross's pre, but why I didn't use him as a streamer yesterday, I have no idea. So that was silly on me for not including him as a streamer for yesterday. So we've gone through them. We'll quickly review them. I'll send out the link for these 2 start pitchers. So if you missed it or we're going too quickly, you can always go back and look at it. Caleb Smith, Jason and I both give him a 3. Arizona also starting Matt Peacock. I'm giving a 1, Jason a 2. Charlie Morton 5. Tom Eshelman 0. I'm sorry, Tom Eshelman 0. Garrett Richards gets a Red Sox fans colored glasses 1 from me, 0 from Jason. Nick Pivetta gets a 4 from both. Kyle Hendricks 5. Zach Davies 2 from me, 3 from Jason. Wade Miley 2 from me, 3 from Jason. Eli Morgan, we agree 0. JC Mejia, even though with the cool initials, Jason's still going 0. I'm giving him a 1. Kyle Freeland, 1 from both of us. Herman Marquez, I give him a 3. Jason a 2. Lucas Giolito, 5 for both. Dylan Cease on Jason's homework. I was going to say home run list. Homework list, 4 for me, 3 for Jason. Matt Manning, 2 from both of us. Zach Greinke, 5 from both of us. Denny Duffy, 2 from both of us. Brad Keller gets a 0 from both. Dylan Bundy gets a 0 from both. Trevor Bauer, a 5 from both. Trevor Rogers, 4 from me, 3 from Jason. Freddie Peralta and Brandon Woodruff, 5. We go to Bailey Ober, 1 from both. Barrios, 5 from both. Marcus Stroman, 3 from me, 2 from Jason. Homework list again from Jason, watching those spins. Michael King, 1 from me, 0 from Jason. I'm hoping that one of the 2 outings he sneaks in 5 innings and sneaks out a win.
Actually, with correction, Rogers was on the homework list. Stroman was on the injured.
That's
the hip
correct.
List. That's
there
why
we
I got
go.
Stroman.
Absolutely, absolutely, with the hip. Jameson Tyone, 3 from both. James Caprellion, 4 for both. Vince Velasquez, 1 and 1. Spencer Howard, 0 for both, but we both still are not getting rid of him in our dynasty leagues, hypothetically. Chase DeYoung, Chad Kuhl, 0s across. Blake Snell, kind of a reluctant 2s. What's gone on? Chris Flexen, 2s. Anthony Escafani, 4 for both. A lot of agreements here. Maybe it's because I didn't use my list, which would have potentially had some bit disagreements. John Gant, 0. Carlos Martinez, 0. Mike Fultonevich, 2 for both. Robbie Ray, 4 for both. Chris Flexen, 2 for both. And Joe Ross, 2 for both. We had a little longer than normal, Jason. Appreciate you hanging out the extra half hour. While Clay is off, like I said, on assignment, if you will, hopefully checking out some family. What do you got going on this week? What did you write about this week, and what are you planning for next week on your Collette calls?
Right now, I'm working on looking at how pitching numbers are making a shift. Like I've had this concern for a while about workload as it starts to catch up. You look at numbers this month and offense. A lot of people will say, "Oh, hey, it's because they're changing the baseball. That's why offense is up." But you got to go back and look at context of things as well. One of the things I noticed is that ERA of starting pitchers has made quite a leap this month. From in May, it was 4.03. This month, it was 4.47. So that's a sizable leap. I want to go back and look at what happened in previous Mays to June with it. And as we've mentioned, the weather's been a little crazy this month around, but the reliever ERA is not showing that same kind of thing. And so the behavior of relievers pitching indicators have been more consistent, whereas starters are doing that. And maybe is that the starters, their workload's catching up with them? Because let's be real, it didn't look like many teams were changing the ways they were using their starters from even 2019. It's like we see guys out there doing 100+ pitches right out of the gate. I think a couple of teams that come to mind. I even wrote a couple of weeks ago in Collette Calls about my concerns with Cleveland and how Cleveland was running their guys and their starters. And, Savali ended up breaking down and Bieber ended up breaking down. But Terry Francona was riding those guys rather hard. And the same thing was really happening in Oakland on the relief side. It seemed like Yusmeiro Petit was pitching every game. And he had 7 wins in his first 26 outings. Well, he hasn't had a win since. And he blew the lead yesterday, the day before against Texas. So I'm trying to look at that, a revisit of that to see where we're at with some of this. And is there anything to be worried about with starters, as we've seen some high profile starters go down here in the last 7 to 10 days? And we're not out of it. I think it's going to be more of the same. And this summer, it's going to come down to, and that applies to your fantasy team as well. Who has depth? I mean, if you're in a keeper league and you have 40, your 40-man rosters, how many of those spots do you have on prospects where your eyes are towards the future rather than now? And are you like, okay, I just lost this pitcher and I don't want to cut this prospect, so I'm going to just leave this guy in my lineup? Or like, are you willing to forego immediate stats for the future, or are you just going to say, okay, I got to do something here? And maybe that depends on where your league rules. If you have to have active guys in, these are all stories I'm having in local conversations, because there are some teams that have, like, I've got too many prospects and I'm not going to give those guys up. So I'm just going to carry these dead guys in my lineup. And it's a keeper league. So if I don't do well this year, I'm out. They're like you and I and Tout, we don't have that luxury. We want to make sure we get above the point threshold. And so we have to pick up some of these guys and maybe make a cut here off the reserve roster because you have to try to find something. So It all depends on that, but that's really where I'm trying to take a look at things right now.
No, it makes sense. I like right. Joe Sheehan talked about it with Jeff on their recent podcast. It's not just the changes; it's a delta over what normally happens, and so that's the key. So good. Looking forward to seeing that piece again. Thanks, Jason, and I know you've got a little bit of a change coming up on Monday. Good luck going on there.
Thanks.
I'm sure we'll hear all about it on Twitter. And we'll continue to see some of your tweets in the ballparks, and I'll be at, this Tuesday I'll pull the park for the third time to see the future Red Sox center fielder Jarren Duran. Although I think they're going back with some Olympic stuff. We'll see.
How is that park?
You know what? I'm not gonna go overboard with the plot. It's very nice. Okay. But what park isn't, right?
That's right. Well, yeah, I'm going tonight. My son and I are going to Kannapolis. They have a new the Kannapolis Cannonballers. They used to be the Kannapolis Intimidators, and they did not have a nice ballpark. And I'll come out and say that now. They had probably the worst one I'd been to in the minor leagues. It was an old park built in. If anybody had listening or watching had been there, it was not a great park. The new one's fantastic. It's right near downtown Kannapolis, which has this old Main Street USA type of feel to it. It's a really nice park. Going there for the fourth time tonight. I should have a mini season ticket package because I just really enjoy it. And the Charlotte Knights are on the road, so that wasn't an option up there. But really have enjoyed my times going up to the games in Kannapolis. They got a really nice Old Arbor Brewery is right there. You can go there and pregame. You got a couple of eats options right there before you walk in. But being able to watch minor league baseball this year has been fun. And now that I've done all 30 major league parks with my trip to Kansas City last week, now my focus is getting to more minor league parks. And I want to get to Greensboro, Winston-Salem, places I haven't been to yet. In my 7 years of living in the Carolinas, I haven't ventured out to too much of those. But now my focus the rest of this season is getting to more minor league games.
Yeah, well, I should say, what new park isn't nice nowadays? There's some old barns that aren't so nice, but yeah, what new park isn't? But very, very good, very nice experience, and for the Woo Sox, especially because they don't go woo all that much, which is what makes it even.
See, we do in the Carolinas with Ric Flair coming from here. That is a sound drop that is used often at sporting events in this area.
It's there, but it's just not. It's not as much as I thought it would be. Although they still play Neil Diamond. It's like. All right,
they do that here too. They do that here too.
Anyway, and you know what? I've been to 2 games. In both games, there's been a ball called because the opposing pitcher was waiting for the song to end, or the fans were still singing. And literally, it's amazing. Both games, a ball was called because the crowd was still too loud.
That's funny.
It was. I mean, I haven't checked to see if it's only the 2 games I've been to. And it's not because I'm singing, that's for sure. But anyway, this time we really will say goodbye. Thanks, Jason, for hanging out. Check it out. We'll have the 2 starts posted on a Google Doc for you guys to check out later. Clay will be back next week. Won't be babbling so much. And have a great weekend, everybody.
Take care, guys. Thanks.
Bye.